When we started the company, blockchain monitoring was about just looking at one address in isolation, right? And the way that's evolved now is that when we monitor an account, we don't just look at one account now. We look at all the accounts around it, right, that had interacted with it. And how this is now evolving even further is, let's take Binance, for example, right? We can naturally monitor one of Binance's account, but at the same time, we know all of Binance's wallets, which means that we can monitor all of Binance's wallet at the same time and use that data to help our clients who want to do business with Binance conduct real-time risk assessment. Imagine if you're a bank and you want to open an account for BitMEX, right? You could come to Merkle Science and Merkle Science could help you do a risk assessment on BitMEX by analyzing all of your past transactions and giving them that kind of confidence to work with the crypto space.
And what would you be looking for?
So we'd be looking for potential money laundering risk or exposure to darknets, criminal actors, right? Because every time crypto goes into an exchange and crypto goes out, we can see where it's coming, where it's going. And we can aggregate all that information into graphs that says, okay, exchange A, last 5 years, 2% of its deposits came from ransomware. 5% of its deposit came from darknet, right? And this can be used for risk assessment. But to take it one step further, we don't just have data on bad guys. We have data on good guys as well, which means that not only can we tell you, an exchange exposure to bad actors, we can tell you an exchange exposure to other exchanges, which then can be used for things like business intelligence, right? Wouldn't you love to know who your competitors are trading most commonly with? Like, that's valuable.
I would, yeah, I think I would. Can you tell us that?
Yeah. After, not on the air.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I'd be very interested in that. So, okay. So what you're doing basically, you're taking publicly available information on the blockchain, you're analyzing it in such a way that you're able to gain these types of insights. Now, what makes you guys able to do this better or different than anyone else?
Fair question. In fact, when we entered into this space, there were naturally a couple of companies already, doing something similar, right? Now, what really sets us apart, I think, is our approach to this problem, right? A lot of the companies, when we entered, they were focused simply on, building large databases, right? Of, let's say, addresses which they've attributed to good guys, to bad guys, right? And so, the way that their platforms usually operate is when you screen an address, they look at all these past transactions, who they've interacted with, cross-reference those parties on a database to say, okay, account A sent funds to a darknet, account B sent funds to sanctions. Now, this approach in the past used to be very effective when we only had, 3 or 4 popular blockchains, the Bitcoins, the Ethereums, the Doge, right? And everybody was just using those. Today, now that crypto has become so popular, we have hundreds of blockchains out there, all with their own unique data sets. And so relying on a database approach no longer is effective. And what really sets us apart is right from day one, we wanted to solve the problem of how can we do risk assessment on accounts that are not on anybody's database, right? And the way that we do this is by overlaying the database approach with a behavior analytics approach, right? Where we not just look at where funds are coming from, we study account transaction behavior, right? And use that in order to provide clients with a more accurate risk assessment. And the good thing about the behavior approach is that it's blockchain agnostic, right? It doesn't matter which blockchain we're applying it on, it'll still work because transaction behavior is the same regardless.
That's really super interesting. Interesting. I guess I'm curious, like, in all the time that you spent analyzing identities and wallets and behaviors on the blockchain, are there any insights you guys have been able to pull out that you're particularly proud of, or do you feel like we're I always think of the famous example of, I think it was like Target that like started sending accidentally started like mailing women like pregnancy stuff before they even knew they were pregnant because their internal system had flagged that based on the changes in their purchases somehow signified they were pregnant. And I mean, are you guys able to sort of pull anything like really magical out of the data like that?
Yeah, so this goes back to how I talked about how blockchain analytics was evolving, right? So, when we first started out, it was more reactive, right? We know an address is bad, right? And so we then start looking for other addresses that interact with it. But over time, what we realize is that we can start designing models to, map out a criminal's behavior, right? So let me give you one very simple example. In a lot of the scam cases that we've investigated, we realize that oftentimes, and let's use a sexy example, right? One very nice to talk about example would be sextortion scams, right?
Okay.
They're very, very prominent.
What is a sextortion scam?
And sextortion scam is when you receive an email that tells you that somebody has successfully installed malware on your computer, gained access to your webcam, and was able to record you pleasuring yourself, right? And if you don't transfer,
can they do that?
No. Well, they can, but because this is a scam, oftentimes it's fake. They're playing on the victim's fear.
Got it.
Right? So they haven't really installed anything,
okay,
but they say they have, right? And then they tell you, you have 24 hours to transfer $1,000 worth of Bitcoin to a certain address. Otherwise, they're going to email that video to your entire contact list.
Wow.
Right? And a lot of people,
I never get these emails. Is this, I still get
I'll send you one right after this.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. No, I still get like the Nigerian prince type emails, but I've never got the we've caught you masturbating email before. I didn't realize this was a thing.
Don't feel left out.
Okay, all right, go on.
Right, so we see a lot of this, right? And what we realize is, and the reason why we know it's a scam is because they would use the same Bitcoin wallet for thousands of emails. And so the fact that they use the same Bitcoin wallet means that there's no way for them to actually track who's paying them. Right? If I can't track who's paying me, that means that
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Right? But once we've identified that and we know that this is a popular way that they run such scams, we can run a search over the entire blockchain and say, okay, find me all Bitcoin wallets that have received deposits from, let's say, more than 50 unique wallets, all in the $1,000 range.
Yeah.
Right? Because that would indicate that that is a wallet being used by an organization to run such scams.
Interesting.
Right? And then we can proactively tag those wallets and protect other people.
But it could also it could be a wallet asking for donations or something.
It could be. It could be. So naturally, there's a couple of other checks that we'll have to do. We'll have to monitor time period, when it happened, things like that. Right? And then, but that allows us to, kind of introduce a predictive element to say, okay, this is likely, associated with XYZ crime.